The fact that you even just reach out randomly and just text like, hey, just thinking about you. Hope you're having a great day. Like that, like, don't tell anyone that.
Once I had that thought, and it was in a moment where I had that thought, I go, oh, so reaction literally is just a wasted emotion. I'm a firm believer that change is never what's next. I think what's next is kind of sexy. Thinking about getting into a new relationship or being on that cloud nine, that change is sexy. What's hard is the belief systems that we've brought up.
You don't own people, just like you don't own clients. No matter if you're a salon owner or a hairstylist, you don't own anyone. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Successful Stylist Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ambrosia Carey, and I have a fellow friend, podcaster, just an amazing human being. And I wouldn't do this any other way. I only want to bring in the amazing leaders in our industry. And today we're going to be hanging out with Corey from Hairdustry. We're going to be talking about kind of just some of the changes that are happening and even just our mindset and how we want to approach some of those things that are happening. Corey, how you doing? Like, we just got a chance to hang out and chat for a little bit before we started, and we already started on a really high note. So I would love for you to just like kind of spill everything about what really kind of got you into this mindset of like, I really want to lead the industry and leave it in a better place than where I found it when I started.
Well, first off, thanks for having me, and thanks for having these conversations. It's so weird. Like almost all the conversations that we have, we should probably be recording because we always seem to come up with some kind of gem or some kind of like thought about it. But going back to the podcast, we started the podcast in 2018, honestly, I just thought that it would be a really fun conversation to talk to. We have to kind of rewind to 2018, and we were like so much an influencer industry at that point. Like Instagram was popping off and all the shows were popping off and all the influencers are on the stage and stuff. And I thought that there was a space just to have conversation with the people that you see in front of you. And that was kind of the idea of the podcast. And then I went to my buddy, Tony. I said, listen, bud, I would love to be like the Jimmy Fallon of the industry. And wisely so, he said, well, if we're going to have these conversations, we have to bring heart, we have to bring soul. So literally before the podcast started, it changed, and because he was absolutely right. Like, if we're going to have these conversations, let's make it valuable and let's make it worthy. That's kind of how we started. And that was literally the funnel that we looked through. Like, what's this conversation like? What is it going to be? What's it going to be like? And then what really, so that was in January 2018, and then October 2018, we had a conversation with our friend Michael Cole, and it was the first time he had ever talked publicly about his sobriety story and that. And at that point, that was the podcast where I go, we're onto something. Like there can be big differences here because, certainly 2018 to me, it doesn't seem like that long ago, but if you do the math, it was long ago. We were not having these conversations as an industry, not publicly at least. We weren't talking about mental health. We weren't talking about sobriety. We weren't talking about whatever. And like through our format, I kind of felt like it was the first place that we were having these open conversations. Things have changed certainly a lot since then. I don't think that we're the innovator in that, but I think the industry was ready for that. And I think not ready to hear it, but also ready to talk about it. I think that up to 2014, this is just like numbers, I don't really know if they're true or not, but up to 2014, we were such an industry that was dictated and narrative based by the brands that were out there, and the brands don't want us to talk about these things. The brands don't want us to talk about mental health. They don't want us to talk seriously about sobriety and the real challenges of the industry. I think that again, 2018, we were ready to talk about it, as an industry, and we were then celebrating each other as artists in the industry. So that was kind of the kickoff, and that was the one where I was like, okay, we're really, really onto something. And then we kind of doubled down on that. Let's just have real conversation. Now, with that, I have to tell you that I don't really have space for like hairdresser bashing. It's not. I feel like there's enough spaces out there to do that. We don't do that. So many people have reached out to us and be like, oh, I want to tell this story about this person or this brand and stuff. And I have to shut it down right away just because it's just not the space that I want to create. I think that we all have a responsibility about what we're putting out into the world. And that's not the responsibility that I wanted to hold. And frankly, like everybody's doing it, or you can find it wherever you look for it. And be the place that you came to look for that, if that makes any sense at all.
It makes too much sense. I mean, I completely agree with you. I think it's really, you said something, the word responsibility, I'm really fascinated by that. I was actually just reading a book recently by this amazing guru who he's so amazing. I can't remember his name. I'm terrible at remembering names. Anyway, this guru was saying something about the word responsibility. And I like that he just made it so simple. It's just the ability to respond. And we have options, we have choices to respond in a way that can either feed into the problem or we can just be in solution oriented mode. And I think when you do that, it does become contagious in a very amazing, impactful way. And so I love that's something that you've just decided for yourself that you're like, I'm going to put a stop hold on this. This is something I'm not going to contribute to. I'm going to do the opposite. And all it does is kind of radiate something really amazing. And look what you've built out of it. It's really cool to watch what you've been able to foster and these relationships you've been able to build. Like the fact that even just reach out randomly and just text like, hey, just thinking about you. Hope you're having a great day. Like that, like
Ambrosia.
don't tell anyone that. But it's like it's really cool that you do things like that with your peers and friends in the industry, that you let people know that you're thinking of them. Because how often do we pass by somebody and we notice something about them that we were like, oh, that was a really, cute hat, or that was, or that, just smiling at a stranger, or just like those small acts of kindness and how that can kind of cause that ripple effect. I think those are all little tiny examples of how we can respond differently. Yeah, it's just like the ability to respond, just being responsible in a different way.
First off, I love that definition of responsibility. I've never heard it that way, but it totally makes sense to me. And I have a romantic relationship with response. And when I was 34 years old, about ish, um, I um, I I decided that I would no longer react and that I would
Mm,
only respond. And so what that did is it kind of gave me the motivation to just take a beat and to pause, because I had the conversation with myself, Ambrosia, and I don't know if this is like if you can understand this, but I I I had to have the conversation was, have I ever reacted to a situation and gotten a positive response? And overwhelmingly, that was a no to me. Sometimes it feels right, or it feels that you got over in the moment. But in the
yeah.
big picture, certainly when it comes to like relationships, like with my spouse or relationships with my kids or whatever that is, like that reaction can feel good in the moment, but in the big picture, in the rest of your life, it does far more damage
Mm,
than it does than it feels good. If that, if you, anyways, that's kind of what. So once I had that thought, and it was in a moment where I had that thought, I go, oh, so reaction literally is just a wasted emotion.
yeah.
It
Yeah,
does not
definitely.
serve you at all.
That's true.
So with that, I go, okay, what am I going to do? Well, then the choice was to respond, and to respond to the issue, whatever the issue is, and to take that beat. And sometimes it takes a day, but that's the conversation. You know what? I'm not ready to respond to this. Let's reconvene tomorrow about this. You know,
Yeah. I like
and
that.
what's really nice about it too is that a lot of us are ready to react to a reaction. And when you don't
Hmm.
get that reaction, you don't know what to do with the energy. So you kind of force the pause as well, which has been really lovely in a lot of the relationships that I've had. Like my goal is to always, like in a salon situation, my goal is to always be the one you can count on to come talk to. Even if we have to have a tough conversation, you don't have to worry about me reacting. Because if you kind of think about it, like whenever you have to have a tough conversation,
Yeah.
you're living in the other person's reaction to that conversation, not your own, not your own response to the conversation, right? Like all that energy
True.
put through and all that like anxiety that you have, it's like, how are they going to react? And I think we kind of say that sometimes, how's Ambrosia going to react?
Hmm.
Like if I can be confident enough and I can be calm enough at all times, then I hope that the people that I work with are confident that they can have any conversation with me, and I'll give the dignity that it deserves, or certainly the response that it deserves, without the fear of me reacting or going off on some level.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. I love this. This is all stuff that, this is what I really enjoy about you as a person. And I just think that to have the ability to respond in a way that is going to shift the conversation and is going to kind of shed light because, for like, what is, I can't think of that saying that was like there's a equal and opposite reaction or whatever. I think being able to respond in a different way, you can really change the trajectory of a story or whatever. And I think this other thing that I'm really obsessed with right now is like, what is true? And this is something you and I kind of like privately had a conversation about in some form, that kind of sparked this whole thing where I'm like, God, I need to have Corey on the podcast and we just need to like to have an open conversation about it. But what really is true, because my truth could be a little differently than your truth, and my experience in life and even just in my past, the things that I want in my future can kind of spark or develop what really is true. And when we have a lot of information coming at us from different directions, and we have these kind of like incubated situations on social media and just the peers that we hang out with, the podcasts that we choose to listen to, then that can also shape what we find our truth to be. So I think just being able to be flexible and be open to what hearing other people's truths are, I think it really helps us not get so stagnant or stuck into this really cemented way of believing that something has to be or cannot be or it must be this way. And that kind of makes me want to segue into the next kind of question or feedback that I have from you, just because you have interviewed so many amazing people in our
Hold up,
industry.
before we move on though, can we
Yeah.
chat about truth?
Yeah, of
Because
course.
the truth to my truth is that my truth keeps changing.
Yeah.
What I once thought about myself has changed. Where
Hmm.
my confidence lies has changed. The stories that I talked about in my own trauma or my own drama, all those things have changed for me. And what I and back and to segue that again into consumption, like I'm very, very, very careful about what I consume these days. You
Mm.
are what you eat, and sometimes you're eating bad information, or
Yeah.
sometimes you're eating, I don't want to say bad because that's putting judgment on it. Are you consuming what's serving you? And moving forward in my life and even the last few years, I'm only interested in what serves me. I'm not interested in what doesn't serve me. What doesn't serve me sometimes are my own thoughts. What
Mhm.
doesn't serve me is what I'm watching on television. What doesn't serve me is what I'm listening to on a podcast. And I have to have these conversations about, is this serving me, or is this not serving me? And I'm at the point in my life where I don't believe in idle consumption. So I don't
Mm.
believe in, like, oh, we're just watching this to watch this. Like I don't, whether it's bad TV or whatever. I know that I don't feel good afterwards. Again, I think the reaction to something can feel good is go, oh my God, like, especially like, you know, some of the reality TV and stuff, you kind of leave going like laughing at the person that was on the screen or something. But then the big picture to me, does this serve me? And
Yeah.
it doesn't. I don't have that many more years left on Earth to spend time on stuff that doesn't serve me. I want to bring up something to take us back real quick, Ambrosia. And so when you were talking about when I text people, and I just say, I'm thinking of you. I, I believe that the universe sent that in a weird way. Like I think that I'm thinking about you because the universe is saying you should say hello. And whether it's just like to say hello,
Yeah.
and put a smile on their face, or maybe there's something going on in their life, but that's not even me. I mean, and the truth with that, the full truth with that too, is like I don't even expect a response back. Sometimes
Mm.
I'll say that, no need to respond. However, know that I'm thinking about you. And it's just to kind of put it out there. And if you need it, awesome. It's like a hug, right? It's like a drive-by
Yeah.
hug. If you need it, awesome. If you don't need it, no harm, no foul. You know.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and I don't need anything. I don't need anything from that. I don't. I believe in the life of gifting, and not the belief of an investment. Sometimes, a lot of times, and it can be as simple as like holding the door open for somebody. Like you get mad because a person didn't say thank you, and the way that I've kind of reframed that conversation in my head is like, I didn't open the door for a thank you. If I
Yes.
did, that was just an investment. Like, am I investing in opening the door? That
Yeah.
just sounds and feels gross. No, I did it.
Yeah.
I did it just to be a gift to that person. And
Right.
thank you. Awesome. If not, that's not my space to own.
I love the drive-by hug thing that you just said, because that's exactly what it feels like. It's a drive-by hug. And then it doesn't feel transactional where you're doing something where you are expecting something in return. And I think we've we're kind of incubated in a situation where there are a lot of transactional interactions between people. Like, you can feel it when you're talking with somebody and you don't have their undivided attention, or they're distracted because they're wondering who else can they kind of grab from the room, or what situation can they get out of this. It's very different than somebody who thinks about what kind of relationship this is and how does this relationship make me feel. I think that that's when things can kind of shift for somebody, and the long term effects of it. Because I think sometimes you have to choose your pain, whether the pain is the initial, like what you get out of it, versus what the long term thing is going to be, or what the pain is over time. If you were to not sever something that didn't serve you and you continue to invest time and interest into it, kind of knowing in the back of your head that you probably it's not serving you, or that it's not going to serve you long term, but you continue to do it because that's the thing that that's what or you're afraid, or whatever the thing is that you're going to insert in it. So I like the whole drive-by analogy, because that's exactly what it feels like. And I feel like that's really the way that we should, like, if I were to say some shoulds and shouldn'ts, I
Mhm.
just think that that is going to serve people in the long run, and it's going to just feel better. I mean, really, if we just want to talk about it, like, there doesn't have to be like a big return on investment. Like, we're so absorbed with all of this, like, I don't know. It's almost like,
To me, it's just about the community, and that
yeah,
can be stranger, that it's just about how can I, once again, to be responsible, use the word responsible. How can I be responsible for the shoes that I walk in?
yeah,
You a lot of times we want outside validation to what that is. You brought up change, and I'm a firm believer that change is never what's next. I kind of think change. I think what's next is kind of sexy. Thinking about getting into a new relationship or being on that cloud nine, like that. That change is sexy. What's hard is the belief systems that we've brought up, and this kind of like goes back into like, what's your truth? What my
mm,
truth is were my old belief systems, or were the belief systems, almost always when it comes time to change, it's giving up a belief system. It's what's behind you that's hard, not what's ahead of you, and but sometimes we put the energy in what's ahead of us, and what's coming is creating the anxiety, but really it's letting go of an old belief system that you haven't quite dealt with yet, or dealing with, or don't even know to deal with, you know.
yeah,
So I just I try to remind myself of that. Is like, oh, change is coming. I'm feeling this anxiety about it. What is it? Well, again, a lot of times we look forward, like, I don't know, do I want this new job? Do I want this whatever? But you just kind of have to turn around and go, okay, what do I have to give up to move forward? So then it gives me a mantra to be like, oh, you're just dealing with an old belief system. Go find that,
mm.
and let's figure it out.
That's really, I think you even bringing that up, I think that that's just really what I really want to talk about that some more, because I am someone who personally identifies with that, because I'm constantly like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Not celebrating, not thinking about how I got here. Really, even like it didn't even really happen until later on in life. Like, what do I actually want from this? It's just like, I'm just doing it because I'm asked to do it, or I feel compelled to, or someone wants me to be a part of something and it felt exciting to be liked, or, it's like, and that goes back to like the playground.
Mhm. There
It's
it
like
goes. Yeah.
when Stephanie decided that she didn't want to be my friend anymore, and I'm like, why doesn't Stephanie like me anymore? I'm gonna buy her a gift. And then she made fun of me. It's like all this stuff that happens from her past. So what do you think it is that why, I guess, not just what, why do you think it is that we don't want to lift that curtain and really find out what is in there that is shaping our belief system and how we take our next steps or advanced steps forward?
Because everything that's comfortable is that belief system. We've created, and let's be
Hmm.
honest, created a belief system that makes us feel comfortable. And to move outside, even just the notion of moving outside of that, the next step could be way more comfortable, right? It could be
Yeah.
a bigger bed, it could be whatever, it could be way more comfortable moving forward. But we've created this story about ourselves,
Hmm.
right? And we kind of have to leave that story behind. You brought up Stephanie. I've thought about that too, if I'm allowed to share. I wish as a society, and certainly in the industry, that we could get to the point where we just say this relationship ran its course. You know,
Yeah. Right.
And I'm saying this from a place of guilt. Like there's been so many times where, not so many times because I haven't left that many salons, but I've left salons and really badmouthed the salon that I left.
Hmm.
And it, the shoes that I walk in now, I'm mortified and embarrassed by that. You know what I mean? Because I don't think that they deserved it. If you've been to, and by the way, I'm not talking about like real like trauma or real whatever,
Yeah.
but so many times we leave situations, we leave girlfriends, boyfriends, friendships, relationships, and I think the human experience is we have to burn the fields behind us.
Hmm.
I don't think that has to be. As a matter of fact, I kind of think the opposite of that. Like this relationship served me to this point, and now I can move forward, and they can move forward as well. I don't
Yeah.
have to burn these relationships, and again, I think for this conversation, and certainly us both being in the industry, I've seen it so many times. Like you don't have to talk bad about what's behind you. You can just appreciate for what it was. And I also think that's part of the healing too. you know
Yeah.
it, appreciate that. You know what, Ambrosia was a good boss for that time of my life. Well, now I need to move on. Now I'm a
Right.
sweet owner, now I'm a whatever. But if it wasn't for that relationship with Ambrosia, I don't have the strength to do that. Or whatever, fill in whoever it is. I just wish that we could normalize that relationships run their course, and that's okay. And by the way, it can run its course and not be what it once was.
That's
Like
true.
it can be just a different relationship moving forward.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so
I know I have a couple of friends who I've had in my life since I was in the first grade, and our relationships have evolved in time, and I think that's the healthy part about it. I mean, I think it's what's great and what's beautiful about a relationship in general is that exactly what you were saying. There are going to be times where you're going to need someone a little bit more than others, and it could feel like a slightly codependent relationship, but it was what was needed at that time. We leaned on one another, and we were able to fill that space in for one another to help us get through either a tough time or a learning time or a growth time or whatever that was. And I like that's so much healthier to look at it that way, that it's just like it can be that and we don't have to go any deeper into it. We don't have to be angry that it's changed. We don't have to be angry that that person has moved on in their life or that we've moved on in our lives. Um, I feel very grateful for all the relationships or all the experiences I've had in my life, because that means that that's who I've become today. I would be a different person if I didn't. I've had people even ask me, I had my son when I was 18 years old, and they would ask me, do you regret having a child so young in your life? Do you feel like you missed out on things? And I would say, why would I regret that? Because that would indicate that I would be a completely different person today, that everything that I've had up until now wasn't worth it. And, what do I have to compare it to? That this is the life that I know. So, and I'm very grateful for the life I have. So no, I don't see how that was a negative at all. If anything, it was a positive because I learned how to respect myself differently for my son, because I was now in charge of leading this human being who was relying on me. And the awesome part about it is that he taught me how to be more compassionate. He taught me how to look at things through a different lens. Otherwise, it was going to ruin my relationship with him. If I just forced him to see things the exact same way as me, that would have severed our relationship entirely. As a matter of fact, I tried that. I was like, no, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. And the more I pushed, the more he pushed back. And I was like, oh crap, I actually have to do something differently. So, you know, I, I think with everything that we could look at, that, just kind of going back to what we're originally saying in the very beginning, every situation that we look at that we almost think of it as a negative encounter, or why is this happening to me? Um, Instead of seeing it that way, it's like, know that it's happening because you are learning a lesson in your life that maybe you're relearning again. Maybe we go through those moments where we relearn lessons, but it's a chance for us to build a different relationship with ourselves. And that's the way that I'd like to see it. And that's really the way I hope that everyone sees it. If we relate it to our industry, a lot of stylists who tell me, they can't get fully booked, or it's like really dead right now, or blame the algorithm, or whatever the thing is that's like really troubling, or kind of getting in the way of their business, feeling like a wholehearted ecosystem. It kind of goes into that too, that sometimes clients are going to see you for a very specific portion of their lives. And it ran its course. If you could see everyone that came into you 100% of the time, you wouldn't have enough hands, time, or any of that in the world. Like it just, you would not be able to sustain it. So, and that's, I think, the important part about growing anyway.
And that even goes back to that. I mean, understand
Yeah.
that when a client leaves, it just ran. Let me ask you this, and and if you're listening in, I want you to be honest with yourself too. Have there been times where you've had clients and like you knew 3 months or 6 months before, like, oh, this is coming to an end?
Yes.
Like, and there's nothing like
Yes.
physically, it's just like, it's just there's this disconnect between you guys anymore, or there's this. Now, I've also had people that I think that it's going to end on the next appointment and they're still here 6 years later. So it's not 100%.
Totally.
That algorithm isn't 100%, but I can, actually, I can't even think it's specifically who the person was because I've just kind of moved on from it. But I definitely remember having those feelings about like, oh yeah, this has run its course. I
Mhm.
also think it's good to be like, yeah, it's this has just run its course, and when you see them on the street a year later, I think you just thank them for being in your life for when they were, and it doesn't have to be, because our clients are quick to apologize and they'll give you every excuse in the world as why they're not coming to see you anymore, and that's fine, I mean,
Yeah.
for me, it's fine. I don't, that's where life is abundant.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So I guess if we were like gonna talk a little bit more about like what you have been noticing within the people that you've been interviewing in the industry, and you go to all these shows and you're just around a lot of people in our industry, you get exposure, a lot of exposure. We were talking about like 2018, some of the things that you started to really catch on to as far as the podcast and everything, and the things that you've been seeing evolving in the industry. Do you have any predictions? Like, what do you think is going to be happening next? Or I guess like that's a really big question right now, a big bite to chew on. But I guess some of the things that you're seeing happening now, I suppose. And then I guess we could kind of talk about like what our future predictions are. But what are some of the things that you're noticing that is that is shifting in our industry?
I think a couple things that are obvious to me is that, and we have to go like post pandemic, and where are we at post pandemic? I mean, I definitely see a huge rise and recalibration of independent educators. You listen, if you're out there and you're really smart and you're really whatever, I would come up with like an app. I would come up with a space where we can find independent education, because just like building your book behind the chair, I think it's really hard just to get the word out for independent education. I think that there's a big space for that. I think that the tree is shaking a little bit, and I think the real winners are rising right now. And I think the people that became an independent educator just to become an independent educator, I think that they're kind of getting left in the weeds. And again, not to be negative or anything, I think it's just the nature of it. I think it's the nature of all. I mean, we can say the same thing about suites. Like suites was the new sexy thing a few years ago, and
Yeah.
now like that's getting shook out a little bit. And it's only the people that can make a business out of it that are kind of staying in place there. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not, but it is what it is. But I think that that's what we're saying. However, I think that there's some incredible independent educators out there, and I think that they're doing a real service for the industry. I just think that they're hard to find, to be
Yeah.
honest, which makes me sad a little bit, because there's so much information to be shared that I wish that we could find more stuff, certainly locally in your area. Pivot Point did a great white paper about how we're absorbing education post pandemic. And they
Hmm.
talked a lot about what people are looking for. I highly recommend anybody kind of read that, especially if you're an independent educator or if you're an event person like we are. That's why it was interesting to us, because
Yeah.
we do our event. But they talked about things being more local. They talked about if they're going to spend the money, they want to be in the room with with big names or with names of people that they want to be in the room with. I think what that means, or at least how I took that, is like it's not always like brand education. I think we're
Hmm.
moving away from brand education. I think that there will always be brand education. However, I think as an industry we're also moving away from that, and I think we're looking for more personal kind of real conversations.
Yeah, I also see the independent education shifting a little bit, and I do believe that there's been enough of a cycle now where people have been seeing like, okay, there's a difference between somebody who does things really well on social media, like specifically in the platform, versus being able to apply some like tangible things that can be done behind the chair to actually serve the stylists who can make money and can actually like, apply that to their everyday. Do you think though, like this is a conversation I've had with several of my friends who are both in independent education or used to be. And one of the questions that I've had for them is, do you think it's really challenge, well, okay. So the real question is, do you think that people are attending the classes because that person has more influence, or do you think that the person is attending the class because they believe that they're a strong educator? And most of the time, I would be as bold as to say 9 times out of 10, most people are saying it's because they are an influencer and someone just wants to be in the room with that person. Do you agree with that, or do you think that there's a way that
I
people who
think
are solid educators are doing it differently?
I think that I think the answer is yes, right? I mean, like you try to when you choose to go to these things, what's
Yeah.
bringing you there? You know, is it the fact that there's an influencer or there's an educator? I'm trying not to use the word influencer or artist anymore. I'm trying to use like educator because I
Yeah.
think that's the real shift here. You know,
Yeah.
I think I think influencer and I think artist, that was 2018, and that
Hmm.
was the space in there. Now I believe the ones that are still surviving are the educators. So I guess I just answered that question without even realizing that I answered that question. Yeah, I think that people are going. I think that people are going for education. And by the way, if they have a 500,000 followers, that's awesome too. You
Yeah.
know, I think that, but I also think that moving forward, that's it. I think that it's going to be more. Actually, let me back up. Hopefully moving forward, that's it. That you're a good educator, so that's the way that you're using your influence, as opposed to being influencer and trying to figure out how to be an educator, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I know our mutual friend Presley, like she only refers to herself as an educator. Now she definitely has influence. There's no doubt about it, because if you go to a hair show with her, you'll see it. But she only sees herself as an educator first, or certainly the conversations that we have. That's it. Like, I'm an educator. And
Yeah.
she doesn't care so much about that influencer kind of thing, but she also appreciates that she has a large enough audience where she can educate more people, and I respect her for that. Like you're growing your education, you're growing your brand and your person only so you can influence more people or educate more people, I guess, is the better way to do it. But I also think, Ambrosia, and I'd love to get in this conversation with you, I think it's two different things, right? Like, I think, like, if you are educating as if you're doing technique behind the chair, that's a different type of education than what we've definitely seen since the pandemic, is the business education. That, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's been 1,000 new people in that space, post pandemic,
Yeah.
and some of it is great, and some of it is not so great. I don't know how to judge it other than to take it, like, was this successful for me? Was it not? Now, with that also being said, you're gonna find your ambrosia. Maybe ambrosia is not your person, but there's another educator out there that might be your person. And that's okay too. But I definitely think that with that type of thing, I think it's less influence based. I mean,
Yes.
definitely marketed based. Like, I know that there's like I know that there's some educated business educators out there that do a really great job marketing. I don't know how great their programs are. But then there's other people out there, like, big shout out to Britt Siva, because she's like figured this out, and she doesn't even really work in the industry. It's so bizarre that she's not really connected to the industry in the sense of, like, all my relationships are with, like, educators. That word I don't use anymore. Influencers, or with the brands. Like, so it's so great when I see somebody that's kind of working outside of all those avenues, and it's being incredibly successful. And
Yeah.
respect the heck out of her for that as well. And also, hers isn't brand based. I think that's amazing. We also have a lot of, like, mental health kind of coaching that's going on here. I'm a little intimidated by that. Again, and not to point at anybody, because that's not my intention at all. However, I get worried about that just because I don't know what the qualifications are, and
Mm.
certainly when it comes to mental health, these are real things. This isn't that I didn't make $100,000 last year. This is like real. These are real things that can have real impact. And I only pray that everybody's in the is coaching in the best of circumstances there. It's not something that I would want to do, as far as a one-on-one kind of thing. I
Yeah.
love sharing my experience. I love sharing my philosophies or how I see the world. And if that's helpful, that's awesome, but that's not mental health coaching.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you on that. I think mental health is to be qualified, I suppose, to be able to take that on with somebody, to take the weight of someone's experiences, and it's very, very specific to the individual. It's you've got people with PhDs here that are serving people who are actually dealing with real mental health issues. So, I also think that the word mental health itself, it's become a very broad, wide umbrella that might not actually be, I think there's a lot of words that kind of float around what mental health could fall under. And self-care, even, I think, has kind of fallen into that mental health situation. And I think that there is probably just like an abuse of the term, perhaps. And I think that that's probably confusing to some people. Mental health is, we see it firsthand, like especially if we're serving behind the chair still, but even salon owners, if we're serving a community of stylists, I can say firsthand, like I see it on a regular basis. I see clients that are dealing with mental health issues. I see stylists who are dealing with mental health issues. So it's definitely a thing. But are we qualified as an industry to really tackle that? I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot of weight to put on to put on someone, and it's also a lot of a lot of uh I don't know if experimentation is the right word, but it is. It's a lot of there's a lot of requirements that I think would fall into that category for somebody to be able to maneuver with somebody properly through some major mental health issues. So yeah, I agree. I'm glad that you talked more about the business side of things because I do believe, well, not just I believe, you know that I believe this is something that I really care about. This is something that I want to tackle, and I want to find out what is it about the average stylist. We're going to talk about the average stylist. So we're just going to say somebody's working behind the chair full time who doesn't hasn't been brought up with a strong understanding of financial education, who wants to continue to grow, isn't really sure how to grow, don't really have the resources. They can't exactly afford it. They have a family that they have to think about. So we're talking about the average person here. So for that person, if they don't have those resources available and what they're finding is a lot more like technical things, and they're able to apply those technical aspects to their business, and yes, maybe they can raise their prices and all that good stuff. That's great. But I think the fact that more people are really just like looking at a larger, so they're able to zoom out a little bit and not focus on just the tree, but they're able to kind of get more of a landscape of forest. I am really excited to see more educators in the field of business, particularly around salons, because salons are their own separate beast. And every single one of them is like a snowflake. Every salon is very different. And there are some there are some structured parts of each type of business model that are like a general rule that you could follow. But I think within each of that, it can be very customized. And for that part of it, I think that's the part that excites me because then you get to find out more about the individual and kind of like what their major goals are and how you can get them to those goals a little bit faster. So it kind of falls under the efficiency umbrella.
Here's what's amazing about our industry, and I don't know if everybody has this perspective, but I hope you do after I stutter through this, is we are very unique in that we have the opportunity to run our business even if we're a W-2 employee. Even if we're working for
Yes.
somebody else, like
Yes.
our chair is our business, and everything that makes you successful behind that chair will make you successful when you're not getting a W-2 and you're working for somebody else. But you have to be focused on that. I was very lucky where like midway through my career, I started working at a Summit salon, and they were able to teach me how to see my business as a business even though I was a W-2 employee. And I would also argue or whatever, if that salon isn't serving you in that sense, maybe it's time for another salon. If you want to learn about running your business behind your chair, yes, it's their business, it's your business. But if that salon isn't serving that for you, I would probably, if that's what you want to do, if you want to be a business owner, if you want to be a W-2 employee, by all means be that as well. But also know that there's always that opportunity to take a really good look of how you're running your chair. And nobody can take that away from you at all. You've got to fill that chair, you've got to make money out of that chair, you've got the opportunity to upsell that chair, you've got the opportunity to downsell that chair, you've got the opportunity for everything behind that chair. And it's the greatest like proving ground that you could possibly have. And almost, I can't not off the top of my head, can I think of another industry that's that way, where you're responsible, for your chair or for your business, even though you're a W-2 employee.
That's so true. I think that's the most valid thing ever. I think sometimes people see it as they're working for the salon or they're working for the salon owner, I suppose, and they are focusing on what the salon owner is doing or not doing. And you have the power as long as you're serving clients behind the chair. And there's a lot of growth that you can do for yourself. And you can take that anywhere with you. It's kind of like an email list versus like a social media platform that can shut down anytime. Email list you can take with wherever you want. Like that's a lot of power. And that's something that I think is really important that if you want to grow within your business behind the chair, then it's like getting really laser focused on marketing to people who really serve you and your future you. And, there's not a greater feeling. I don't even have to tell you this. I don't have to tell any of you guys listening to this if you're in the industry that serving the right client, serving somebody who you cannot believe that they are paying you for their time. It's almost like you feel like you should pay them. Like
Yeah,
I
right.
have clients that I learn so much from, and I just have major props to give to my clients. And that's honestly one of the biggest reasons why I continue to serve behind the chair is one, for education, and two, because my clients are freaking badass business owners, and I learn a lot through them about leadership skills and financial capabilities and all that stuff. So you can curate and you can grow and you can continue to evolve with your clientele behind the chair if you treat it more like a business. And it doesn't matter if you're a W-2 employee. It's just you are allowing somebody else to manage the business side so that you get to focus on your clients and how you want your business to be curated. The numbers get to be handled by someone else. And that can be really freeing.
But
I
I would
think it's
also, but
really
I would,
important.
but hold on. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if we agree or disagree here, but I also think that there's a responsibility for you to know those numbers. I think that there's a responsibility for you to know how these numbers work. I think there's a responsibility for you to understand what those line items are.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean you have to buy your own color, whatever, however you're set up. But there's an understand. And by the way, with that line item, then it's like, can I afford to go on my own? Right?
Hmm.
Can I afford to do this? Because this line item isn't making sense, and I've got to invest a heck of a lot more money into like bringing color in or bringing whatever those line items are into your salon. So I think if again the opportunity is there for everybody. Learn how
Yeah.
those work, or and again, it's not a gatekeep thing, or it shouldn't be a gatekeep thing. But nobody can gatekeep how much you're charging, as far as when a person's walking out the door, how much you just charge them. You know what I mean? And then kind of work off of like a spreadsheet off of there, just to kind of understand there. Here, I'm gonna make you hate me for just a second, but I think the single. A lot of people might hate me after this. But I think, but again, I think that it's hyperbole, whatever. I don't even know if I mean this, but I'm going to say it anyways. Is that I think the biggest challenge that we have as an industry are salon owners. I
Mm-hmm.
think that so many salon owners get into salon ownership because they want to be salon owners, and what
Mm-hmm.
they're not are leaders. And I don't
Right.
necessarily know if there's an investment with a lot of salon owners for leadership, or to be a leader. Because once you're a salon owner, as far as in my opinion, is that you are a leader. You're no longer a hairstylist. You're no longer a salon owner. You are a leader. You're a leader of people. And I wish as an industry that we could. I believe that most toxic situations that the industry talks about are from salon owners that lack leadership skills.
Yeah.
Or haven't even focused on leadership skills. And here's what I've learned in my experience is that ego is the worst way to lead people.
Oh gosh, it's so true. I don't disagree with you at all. I completely agree with you. I don't think this is going to trigger anyone. I think everyone would agree with you that when you step into ownership, you now signed up for a completely different role. Your job no longer is about serving your clients. You now are serving your other clients, which are your stylists. And so anytime that you are in charge of leading that, then you've got to focus on other parts of the business. And I think
And other
as
parts of yourself, more importantly,
and the
most
part,
important.
yes, absolutely. Like, how do you support somebody who doesn't think exactly like you? And how can you be flexible? And there's no one way of mastering your business because that is always shifting because you are always shifting and so are the people around you. So you have to constantly be in that growth mode. And that is going to be something that you are completely responsible for. Every single person that steps foot in that place, you are responsible for. And that is what you're signing up for. I think you're spot on. Sometimes I think what happens in our industry is that people look at the only way that they can grow is that they become a salon owner. That's been the narrative that people have been fed since day one. You become a hairstylist, you get really busy, then you work with an assistant, and then the next step, you become a salon owner. And I think that that's something that we really need to kind of strip away. Like, what really does that mean? And what is exactly is it that you're signing up for? But I think the most important thing is being honest with yourself. What do you actually want from it? A lot of times people do this because they're like, well, I can't be behind the chair forever. Sure. Yeah, you're not wrong. But I think sometimes people think about what do they really want out of it? And they're not being really honest with themselves. And sometimes when people say things like, I would like somebody else to work for me because then I can diversify my income. What does diversifying your income actually look like? And what are you going to be giving up in order to be focusing on that? Because what I see happening right now is that people see this allurement, I suppose, of if they own a salon and they develop a team differently, they think that it's going to be different. Then what they're going to be doing is they're going to focus on their clients and they're going to be making more money. They assume that they're going to be making more money because they have other people who are contributing to it. But the whole like more money, more problems type of analogy, like if you have more income coming in, then you also have that responsibility to make sure that those people are feeling like they are supported and that you can continue to foster those relationships. Because if they don't have a good experience, then you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable position, but also you are shaping that person for what is going to be moving on next. The whole concept behind our job of what we do, our career, is we want to pass the torch. And what does that mean to pass the torch? You want to have something as healthy as possible. Like if you sell a home, you're not going to sell a house that you have not been taken care of because inspections come by and guess what? You need a new roof, your floors are falling apart, you got asbestos, you have to make sure that you deliver an amazing package because then you get the top dollar for it. That same thing goes with relationships. The same thing goes with salon ownership. The same thing goes anytime that you decide that you're going to take something on for yourself, you have to treat it like something that is that you want to make it optimized. You want to make it something that is as efficient and as well-rounded as you possibly can, so that way you can continue to grow within it and people stay with you. So I guess one of the biggest metrics I would probably look at for salon owners, since we're kind of on that topic right now, is what is your retention looking like? Because people don't think about that.
Right.
Like if you have a constant flow and a funnel of like new stylists that are coming in, that's not a good thing. That's
No,
not good.
you're
You
not
don't
growing
want
people.
that.
Yeah, you're not growing people. To backtrack a little bit, not really. It's on topic, but the biggest learn once I went into a suite, my biggest learn was like, yes, absolutely, I'm making more money, but you know what? I earned every fucking dime.
Yeah.
Like I earned every dime. That means like late nights. That means early mornings, not doing clients. That means handling a lot more of the business that have nothing to do with clients. Like when I left the salon, all that client stuff was taken care of. I mean, all that stuff was taken care of, and all I had to focus on was showing up 30 minutes early so I could be ready for my first client. Those days have long been gone.
Yeah.
I don't shit on salons. I don't shit on suite ownership, but understand what it is, right? Like we have to recognize what it is, and that you are running a business, and those dollars that you are earning are outside of doing clients. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's just it was a realization. I didn't realize that, right? Like I feel dumb saying that now. You know what I mean? Because it's just so obvious, but it just wasn't anything that I thought about then. Now, I mean, there's a lot of other stuff there that I think is absolutely great about suite ownership, where that I think is great and is invaluable, but it's not. None of that is ever a dollars and cents thing. None of it's more about freedom, and certainly starting the podcast. And as much as we travel, I would feel bad if I worked for a salon, like a W-2 and salon owner, and then go, oh, sorry, I need these next 4 Saturdays off. When it's such a prime time. And also what that does, and like what is that if I were to go, I need these next four, now he's got other stylists being like, yo, why does he get so much time off? And I don't want
Right.
that to a salon owner either. Like I don't want my actions to put them in a pickle. I just can't do that.
Hmm.
Fair. Just wouldn't be fair to anybody that I worked with or anything. Anyways, I hope I didn't sidetrack us, but yeah.
No, I don't think so. It is really on topic. Like one of the things that I started doing, oh gosh, I think it was just like right before COVID, I want to say. I had a stylist actually step into the room. Like we do like quarterly check-ins and stuff, and we kind of go over numbers, goals, all that good stuff. But what I was doing is I was sitting down with one of our stylists, and she said to me, I'm considering going independent. I was like, okay. And so I started asking her a couple of questions about what she was envisioning for her business if she were going independent, that sort of thing. She wasn't really sure. She didn't really know exactly, but she was asking me, do you think that that's a possibility? Can I do that? And so then, of course, I had to ask her, I don't know. Do you feel ready for it? Are you ready for it? Like, that's not up to me to decide if you're ready for going independent. That's up to you to decide. Because if you are going independent, then I would hope that you know exactly what that's going to look like for you and exactly what your numbers are going to be. So when we sat down, what I did for her is we broke down all the numbers on the commission side, on her W-2 side, to show exactly what that snapshot looks like month over month for 6 months. And then on the opposite side of the page, we went into all the costs that would go in on average, of course, all the costs that would go into the independent side of things. And of course, I was going off of like what chair rent goes for in my space because I have a hybrid salon. And I showed that to her. And then I just said, okay, I want you to just go over these things and just and price this out. Like challenge me if you'd like to, but price this out for yourself and just see, does this make sense for you in your life right now? And she made the decision because it's always up to the independent. It's always up to the individual. It doesn't, I think sometimes salon owners think that if they put the fear that like, oh no, if you go independent, then this can happen, that can happen. That's the stuff that was fed to me. And it's just such garbage. Like you don't want to become that type of salon owner. I would hope you don't want to become that type of salon owner where somebody just depends on you and they just take your word for it. Arm people with knowledge. Just give away all of your information because that lets somebody make a decision that feels right for them. And then they won't feel tethered. They won't feel stuck. And I think that's the reason why like things like NDAs went away and just a non-competes because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You don't own people, just like you don't own clients. No matter if you're a salon owner or a hairstylist, you don't own anyone. So I think arming with knowledge, like it doesn't matter if you're a salon owner or if you're independent, just look down, divide a line. What would it look like if I did this? What would it look like if I did that? You can find all these answers through Google, ChatGPT. Like you could look all this stuff up. You can get the information that you need. And then you're armed with lots of information and you can make an educated decision on it, not just like I guess if I did this and then it would be this, because then it's just a dream at that point. And dreams can really let you down. Like sometimes they're more magical when they remain a dream than when they actually become a reality. So just know exactly what it is that you're looking for. And by the way, she made the decision not to go independent because of that. Same situation happened with another stylist. She made the decision to go independent. You know what? She is freaking killing it. Like
Well,
she's
first of all,
crushing it.
from the industry, and like I'm going to speak for the industry. I applaud you because they felt safe enough to have those conversations with you, and that to me shows that the Ambrosia that we love is true to her word, and she is about the growth. And she is like making the industry a better place by making better people in the industry. I applaud you for that because
Thank you.
that is certainly not how I came up. Now I
Yeah.
came up. I'm a little bit older than you, and the industry was a lot different then. It was before suites. It was before a lot of the there was some booth rental stuff, but that was all janky. But there wasn't that, and like I never had the opportunity to leave a salon with a pat on the back, and not a kick
Yeah.
in the ass. So I applaud you for that, and I would hope that the industry moving forward, and like you said, now that we're on the other side of it, I signed an NDA. I signed a non-compete. I did not an NDA, but a non-compete. NDA, that's a whole nother situation.
Yeah.
What happens here, state? I probably should have in some of the salons that I worked at, but I did not sign the NDA. It's here didn't happen here. That kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that moving forward that this next generation of owners is aware of that, and I think you should double down on that. I mean, I know a salon that I'm friendly with, and that's definitely not it. You're an idiot if you want to get into a suite. You're an idiot if you want to go independent, and that's it. You're just an idiot if you go. But to sit down and kind of explain that, like, does this make sense? And if it makes sense, please fly. Should we
Yeah.
should we should all be helping each other fly.
No, and I think that's kind of like the same thing when somebody says like they've made the decision or they're thinking of doing something. More than likely, when they're thinking of it, they've probably already made the decision that they're going to do it. So the worst thing that you could do is push back, because then they're just going to be like, wow, well, you're just now my enemy, and so when someone makes a decision to do something and they are vulnerable enough to share that with you, the only thing, I mean, your really only option is to embrace it and to just help them with making that next step forward, because you just never know what the future looks like. And you and I both have been in the industry long enough that people will come back. They come back through the woodworks. It becomes a very small industry the longer you're in this industry. And protecting the ecosystem of you and your message and what you want to do within this industry, the way that you treat people will come back to you in so many amazing ways if you don't hold on to the fear. Just let go of it, because it is just this old narrative that just because that's what you've been taught doesn't mean that that's what you need to do. Just because our parents did something a certain way doesn't mean that we have to repeat that. If our parents got into debt, does that mean that we want to do the same things as them? Because then evidence has shown that that's what's going to get us in debt too. What would we want to make different choices so that we can get different results? I would hope so. So that goes for salon owners too. Like if you're going to take that on for yourself, arming everyone with as much information as possible, being vulnerable enough to ask questions, letting people in, letting their decisions be just as important as your decision too, because your way of seeing things is only from this scope of the lens, and there's a whole pie. And if you let more voices be there, then you actually get to have a richer, more fruitful conversation. You get to have a richer, more a richer experience. And I think on top of it, like there have been many times where I've considered like, do I want to have this kind of responsibility anymore? What am I giving up? I mean, I could admit like gym time kind of falls by the wayside.
But Jim's a great guy.
Yeah, I know. So, I mean, there's definitely things that I've kind of sacrificed or given up, I should say. I mean, I guess sacrifice is kind of a big word, so maybe not that so much, but there have been things that I have not really taken care of. Like some of it probably is like getting better sleep, exercise, like I just said. Those are the things that have come on the bottom of the totem pole because I care so much about this and this is so meaningful to me. And I think you're onto something. I think that is a really big thing that I would hope that I can contribute in some way. I know that it takes a lot to shift the industry, and I think it takes more conversations like this from thought leaders. It takes more conversations like this from people who really care about the sustainability of the business within the hair industry. We've got too many people have too many options, and when you have too many options, then it's hard to make decisions. And with consumers today, like we've got brands, you mentioned something about brands and education. Brands they're in a place too where they are also a business. And so we're going to see a little bit of double dipping. They're going to be on Amazon. They're going to be doing the things that they said that they wouldn't do, but things have shifted now where they have to do it in order to grow as a business, because things have shifted also in the community within our salons. Spaces got smaller. We started filling up less. It was costing too much. People weren't able to afford it. They weren't selling enough products. So then it just becomes, we are all part of that ecosystem that has been changing. We can't complain about it. We just have to adapt with it. And we have to find ways to continue to foster the health and the healthy business within our industry, because what would be the opposite? What would change if we didn't have really great salon owners and we came to a point where we're all like severed and divided in all million different parts? We lose our community. We lose our ability to be able to grow as an industry. We also lose like the average stylist that's staying in our industry. It's at what, like 3 years now? Like that is abysmal. Like I don't
It's a
how
bit to me, and also like I don't know how it is in Oregon, but here like schools are like 20, 30,000, so like you're taking on this 20 to $30,000 in debt, and you're saying like, oh well, I'm going to make this out in 5 years. You'll make that money up in 5 years or however many years, it doesn't matter. But now you're leaving the industry in 3 years. Like what happens to that debt? You're still eating that, and I would argue, I think I can argue this. You'll let me know if I can't, but for in the masses, like we have the opportunity to make more money than any other industry that I know of where you don't have a college degree. You know, like
yeah.
like 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 uh, there's so many hairdressers out there. There's so many people out there that need hair done. Like you have the opportunity. And I'm scared that if you leave the industry in 3 years because it's not working out for one reason or the other, what else are you going to do where you have the same opportunity? And that's very challenging for me. And, as like you, I was a young parent and, I dealt with that early on. Like there were times at 3, 5 years where I wanted to get out of the industry, but then I'm like, well, what else am I going to do? I
Yeah.
still have I still have this debt from school and I still have these mouths to feed and stuff like that. And I stayed in the industry because I didn't really see many more. I saw more opportunity here than I saw anywhere else. And also like if you have to start over if you're starting over another career, and I would argue that however you're successful in any career, it's the same skills that you're going to need in this industry as well. But this industry, honestly, it's just a little bit easier than a lot of other industries. The grass isn't greener when it comes to this industry. I think that this is the industry. If you're here and you love it, stay here and figure it out. Figure out how to find those opportunities. Figure out how to make it work. Maybe you need a new place. I do, going back a little bit too, like I do find that, if you were an assistant in a salon and they did some education in there, I do find that that can be hampering too if it's not the right situation.
Mm.
That when I was coming through too, like even 10 years into my on the floor career, I was still seen as the assistant or the young, what I mean? Like that,
Yeah.
that was, and I didn't, and when I left that salon, that's where my wings grew, and that's where I was
Mm.
like, oh, okay. Now I have a different role now, so I don't necessarily, and that's just human experience. And that's not blame, we kind of always think of that person that came through. I don't know if the word's respect or what the word is, but we always hold that. We hold that against somebody, not against them. I don't know what I'm saying, but it just